Today on Supernormalized, we dive into the inspiring journey of Dr. Mark Sherwood and Dr. Michelle L. Neal Sherwood, the dynamic duo behind Tulsa's Functional Medical Institute. They've spent decades mastering transformative wellness philosophy centered not just on managing symptoms, but achieving complete healing by treating unique individuals and whole people. From co-authoring best-selling books to producing movies on health topics, from groundbreaking work in nutrigenomics and peptide therapies to real-life experiences as athletes and even political candidates, their broad experience and expertise fuels a fresh approach that eradicates preventable chronic diseases while minimizing unnecessary medications. On this episode, we'll explore their innovative diagnostic tools, empowering strategies, and around nutrition and lifestyle changes, plus insights into why functional medicine is critical for tackling today's complex health epidemics. Listen all the way to the end. There's such a great story that Dr. Mark shares of his and Michelle's life, and all power to them. They're actually helping so many people across the world. It's wonderful to hear that people are doing these things and they're getting recognized for their work. And the idea of making movies around it as well, totally cool. So, great episode. Enjoy. Looking at the statistics that I have for YouTube and for my podcast apps, I have a lot of listeners and viewers that aren't yet liked and subscribed. So if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. It's free. And if you're on a podcast app, please give me 5 stars. That'd be really cool. It helps other people find these great conversations too. Thank you. Welcome to Supernormalized, Dr. Mark Sherwood. Mark, you and Dr. Michelle L. Neal Sherwood have created the Functional Medical Institute. And the whole idea of that actually is to look into the whole person rather than just the symptoms. That's a big story to get to. What happened to you and Michelle to actually want to do that?
Well, I think we both have some very unique backgrounds in a sense. We both came from adopted families and had to fight our way through a lot of adversity in our home situations and life situations, early adulthood, and both of us were kind of, I'd say, overachievers. We perhaps weren't the most talented people in the world, but we were not going to be unrivaled when it came to hard work. And so we all had these kind of this competitive nature, and that kind of pointed us both this direction in our separate pathways. And we teamed up together about 15 years ago, and she's my best friend. I like to refer to her not just as my spare rib, but my prime rib, CJ. So it's pretty cool. But no, she's great. And we work together every day and in the clinic with patients all around the world.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Did you at all go through any medical issues yourselves to actually want to go in that direction? Or is it just something that came to you over time because of the people you were seeing?
Yeah, it's interesting. My story is quite unique, and I don't get asked that question very much, which is kind of cool. So I appreciate that. So prior to becoming a naturopathic doctor, I was a police officer. And I was a police officer for over 20 years, and 10 years I was on the SWAT team. So I saw a lot of people in the most terrible situations. I saw life ended in front of me, and you just don't forget that. And then towards the end, the last 7 or 8, 10 years of my career, I was transferred to the police academy. And during that time, the police academy, I did a lot of things, but one of the tasks I had was to be starting a wellness program. And I didn't know really how to do that. So I started traveling around and doing my studies. And one statistical thing got me was the average age of death for a 20-year retired male police officer in the United States of America, 66 years of age. And when I heard that, I realized that study was 50 years before this, and then I confirmed it in this is back in early 2000s, I suppose, and it was actually 1 year less. So I realized that things weren't getting better, they were getting worse.
Ooh,
and that bothered me because some of these people that I had served and worked with for so long, they worked their whole year for this thing called retirement, and they never get to experience it because they died, or they would retire and then die because they lost their identity, and they're very unhealthy. So I wanted to find out why, and that got me started on the pathway to get the wellness program going. And just like that movie Forrest Gump, where he kept on running, I kept on studying, and I never stopped. And it eventually led me down the pathway to become a naturopathic doctor and retire and move that direction.
That's brilliant. All credits to the Academy for even actually starting to look into wellness
I know.
to keep everyone on track. I mean, we do seem to have that social conditioning that work, but what about the balance?
Yeah,
that's I think a major part of it.
It was huge because back in those days, I used to make the statement that wellness was an officer safety issue. And then I realized that protection and service was my issue. So I have to go out there and protect and serve people really in a different aspect, but it's really the same thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, you definitely can't be making peak decisions when you're not actually, running full tilt, really. So yeah, that's amazing to even think of that. So, okay, what inspired both of you to create the Functional Medical Institute and really jump into the idea of the whole person? There must have been a seed, besides your experience with the wellness part of your work in the academy.
There was.
Is there anything else?
Yes, big deal. My wife, on her side of this story, she was a naturopathic doctor and then went back to medical school to become an osteopathic doctor. And she had this idea that she could bring healing into people's lives and change the system, right? And so she got into it and worked a few years, talked to people about nutrition and lifestyle and got them better and got them off medications. And then one day she was fired from the system because too many people got too well. And so here she is, the valedictorian of her medical class, a board-certified internist, board-certified sports medicine, out of work. And obviously that sent her down a pathway of depression for a while. And eventually, in the midst of the worst times of your life, sometimes you get the greatest birth of your life. And this greatest birth of her life was the Functional Medical Institute, because we realized that time together that it had to be done. And so since that time, we've been forerunners, frontrunners, trailblazers, if you will. And we've had to really fight through a lot, with people rejecting us, people thinking we were crazy, that will never work, you're never going to make any money, you're never going to make a living, you're going to go broke. All that, you can imagine all these things. And now we're not looked at as crazy anymore. We're looked at as people that did it and still do it. So, everybody's got a story, as they say, but sometimes, you have to be kicked out of one door or knocked down to learn how to get through another door or get back up again. And so both of us have had to kind of deal with things like that, but her adversity is amazing. I'll put a plug in for her movie. There was a movie made out about her. It was called The Prayer List, and that story is pretty gripping, actually.
Wow, that's a huge story. I'm glad that you persisted against the naysayers. I mean, when you have an idea which is so advanced that they can't see it, that's what happens. And over time, they come around and they're like, oh, wait a minute, that's now normal, which is actually the basis of my podcast, which is Supernormalized, because, for my whole life, I've talked about things like, this in different ways, and people just, when they're not ready to hear it, they can't hear it. So
my wife and I
can now. That's why I've got a podcast.
Yeah, my wife and I were talking just today, actually, about the idea of just the way people think. And my wife said this to me just today. She said, Mark, she said, the way we think is miles ahead of most people, and most people don't get it. And so it's interesting you just said kind of the same thing.
Yeah, well, I think it's natural when you are exploring, say, consciousness, what it means to be alive, what it means to be healthy, what it means to be happy. And these things actually seem to bring intuitions to you about, okay, this doesn't make sense. This does make sense, So, yeah, all power to you.
I appreciate that, man.
You're welcome. Can you describe a typical patient journey in your clinic and how personalized diagnostic testing plays a role in that process?
Well, our journey for a typical patient is when they enter the community, as we call it. We get to know them. And the first thing we ask them is, hey, CJ, what do you like to do? Tell me about your family. Tell me about your kids. Tell me about your life. Tell me about your podcast. We really get to know them from a personal basis, because if you don't know the person, and they don't believe you care about them, it doesn't open the door for good facility of communication, so it's kind of closed off. So we open that door of relationship with them, and we spend about an hour with them to get their background, to get their history. I want to know what's working well, what's not working well, where they want to be, where they want to go. I want them to vision with me. I want them to have a foresight. I want them to dream a little bit. I want to bring back some hope into their lives. And when they get to that place, we start talking about, well, what are we going to do? What's our plan? And so when we start planning a person's journey, again, it's very personalized. Now we have common denominators like this. I mean, you're going to have discussions about nutrition, sleep, stress management, movement, supplementation, etc. Now, the supplementation, there's basics, but it gets far more personalized, of course. And so then we start getting into diagnostic testing, and this is just the way we like to do it. There's kind of 3 tests that we like to do at first. Number 1, we like to do a very comprehensive functional medicine-based blood test. And I think that people always need that. It's more than conventional. It looks at vascular inflammatory markers. It looks at comprehensive hormones and thyroids and your omega index, your vitamin D, your metabolic sections, blood chemistries, etc. And then I like to do genetics. So I want to know how you're wired. When I understand how you're wired, I can really orchestrate environmental changes to provide better, more predictable epigenetic expression. And then I like to look at a test called inflammaging test, which is a combination of the word inflammation and aging. And so it's called a glycan age test, GLYCAN. And I really like that test. That's the first 3 that I do. And then from there, we progress forward to maybe GI stool testing. We might look at dietary antigen testing for food allergies. We always look at those at some point, but we look at micronutrient testing at the cell level, etc. And there's other things we might do, but those are the general pathways we go. And those tests and information derived on those tests, CJ, is stacked upon the existing firming up of the foundation of nutrition, stress management, sleep and movement. And so you can't stack on top of that foundation until you've really got it built.
Yeah. So you look at basically everything that's happening at the same time.
Yes.
And then see what's out of balance and say, well, let's start here. And then we also know we've got to get to that part, but this has got to be done first.
Yeah, there's priorities there you have to go. You have to learn what the priorities are. There's commonalities, but there's also priorities within the commonalities.
Yeah, I heard that in that. Yeah. You emphasize eradicating self-imposed choice-driven disease conditions. What are some common examples, and how do you help patients overcome them?
So common examples of these choice-driven self-imposed disease processes are like type 2 diabetes. That should not exist. In 100% of the people, it is not genetic. It's a choice-driven thing. And for those of the listeners that are listening, that can be reversed 100%. You just got to have the right people around you that will speak truth. So that's very common. I think obesity too. I'm going to call that a disease process because in our country, it's horrible. I mean, this has been a modern day phenomenon, and you combine obesity with diabetes, you got diabesity. And so that would be maybe a third sort of blended category. I think a lot of the autoimmune conditions are avoidable as well because those many times are driven by the beginning of a leaky gut process. And then you go further into this, Alzheimer's, dementia, cancers, osteoporosis, heart disease. Those are the common ones we see that there's a big time preventable aspect to all of those things.
Yeah, I'm hearing that for sure. I've struggled a little bit with obesity myself, and I'm just starting to get a handle on that thanks to an understanding of diet that makes a lot more sense, which balances more protein and vegetables in the right amounts. And if you do it right, you don't get hungry. And I was actually suffering from this continuous hunger. I was like, why am I so hungry? And I was like, I'll just eat a croissant. It doesn't solve it.
No, that makes it worse, man. It's like
it does.
We've kind of got into this weird pattern as people across the globe. When we are down or depressed or blue, we sort of destroy ourselves with food that is never food. It's kind of funny like we do that, So we always tell people it is normal for humans to exist in an excess fat gain resistant mode. That would be more normal. And if we can get that into our mind shift and realize that it's more abnormal to have, fat loss resistance than it is fat gain resistance, it sort of opens up people's minds for possibility.
Yeah. People need to understand that it's garbage in, garbage out. If you put garbage in, what's going to happen?
Yeah, in your mind, in your ears, and your eyes, and your mouth.
You got it. You got it. That's exactly it. I mean, we are actually conditioned by our society and everything we see on social media and TV. And, you would say that if you look at the way TV is advertising at us, it's telling us about a hedonistic society and a hedonistic way of living, which is like, what? If you actually divorce yourself from that, you could probably find ways back to good eating.
I think so. I believe that because we are taught that it's all about me, and this whole thing, it's all about whatever's good for me. And I'm all about free choice. I mean, I'm not going to say somebody cannot eat a croissant or cannot eat a donut. That's their choice. And the consequences of those two, and I'm going to love them either way. Never going to talk about, even when we talk about nutrition, I don't put people on diets, nor does my wife. We don't like the term diet because it puts focus on what you're not supposed to do instead of what you're supposed to do. So we give people a list of foods that we would say are anti-inflammatory and tell people you can have as much of that as you want. And that gives people a mindset that, like you just mentioned, when you eat better, you get hungry less, but you get more nutrient activity in your life than eating those high-calorie, low-nutrient foods. So it actually becomes cheaper. You save money, you lose excess fat tissue, and you get more healthy.
It's happening to me.
Oh, yeah.
How do you balance eliminating unnecessary medications while ensuring patients still receive effective treatments for their health challenges?
We don't demonize medication. A lot of times in our world, there's almost two extremes. I'm going to go all natural, or I'm going to stay over here. And I don't look at things alternative or anything. I look at more natural, time-proven, time-tested ways, and then I realize that the modern-day society has the addition of medicines and the study of pharmacological interventions. I realize that. So when we have people that come to us, we realize that medications can be used. But when they're used, they should be used properly for the least amount of time as possible and have a provided exit strategy. If you don't have an exit strategy, that's the problem. There's no remediation of that. And so we're talking about a system that's set up for failure, and basically it's set up for management of disease, CJ, instead of correction or reversal of disease process, or even better yet, prevention. So again, like someone comes in on blood pressure medication, which is common, right? I see that a lot. We're not going to tell them to get off blood pressure medication. We're going to start doing things through our therapies to enhance their vascular function so that their vessels relax better on their own, so that eventually the blood pressure medication is forcing their blood pressure too low, forcing them to have to get off of that because they don't need it because it's dangerous to be on it. And so it's the way to approach it, and that's been our approach since day number one.
Yeah. Both of you have authored several best-selling books and produced widely viewed films on wellness topics. How do these creative projects contribute to your mission of true healing?
We started writing books a long time ago, and I'll never forget the very first book we wrote, Quest for Wellness. It sounded cool. We had done a lot of little TV things and podcast and radio and stuff, and thought, hey, let's write a book. And it was kind of fun. It opened up a creative side of us. And we thought, well, a book will be here longer than we are. So we thought that's a great way to sort of have a lasting legacy of truth. And one book led to, 3 more. And so now we've got 4, and there's 2 right now that are about to be published. So we'll be at 6. And then sometime between book 1 and book 2, we had it was a blend. We had a 30-minute television show that was on several networks in the middle of the U.S. And we were about to renew for another season. And one of the producers says, you guys should make a movie. I thought, a movie? Who does that? We're supposed to be clinicians. And so anyway, he put together a concept for us, and we did it. And it was called Fork Your Diet, the movie. And it was a kind of, we called it not a documentary, but a healthumentary. And it was a really interesting story about two guys that on the same journey to try to get better. And one struggled and failed a lot, and the other one was very successful. We thought that was a great picture of the way life is. And we talked about following them on their journey along the way. And that was fun. We really enjoyed that. And then the next story, the same director came to us and said, your wife's story, the story about her getting fired, that's what got you guys here, kind of like you did a moment ago. And he said, and that's a good story. And I'll tell you what, man, we had to really wrestle with that one because that brought up a lot of pain, man, all over again. And I won't spoil the punchline because I really hope the viewers watch that. But to get back up, not just from getting fired, but from being homeless and abused as well. I'm talking about my wife. Who does that? So that story opened up an idea of freedom for both of us, I suppose, probably her more than a kind of a healing process. And of course, that was very successful. And then we thought, well, movies, entertainment, people love that. And we can cross into other areas, other communities like that. And we've done, I think, 6 going on 7 with another one getting ready to jump in this summer. I was just talking to a friend of mine, the Incredible Hulk, today, Lou Ferrigno. Remember him, right? And so we believe he's going to play a part in the next movie. So we're excited about that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea of having movies to put this information out there is perfect because, all it takes is a seed, really, for people to really click into it and go, wait a minute, maybe I should change in some certain way. So that's very creditable. Thank you. That's great work. So Dr. Michelle has extensive training in nutrigenomics and nutrigenetics. And how does this emerging science shape the personalized nutrition plans that you recommend?
When you look at genetics themselves, genes have changed 2% in 10,000 years, CJ. 2%. That's it. So if that's true, which it is, then why do we have so much disease process today that we did not have 100, 200, 300, 400 years ago? It's the environment. So what happens is our genes are these books or recipe books of proteins that are responsive to environmental cues, whether that be a virus, a bacteria, tissue injury, whatever the case may be. So the genes are always being responsive to the environment around us. And that environmental genetic interaction is called epi, which means environment, genetic, conversation, and they interact together to promote maybe a genetic response, which is a genetic downstream metabolism process, right? And so when you look at the way genes are wired, we look at the whole strands, we look at different various places where there might be it's called a single nucleotide polymorphism or SNP. And we look at those variations, the way the proteins are made, and that changes what might need to be done environmentally. It also changes the way the genes are responding to the environment. So that's nutrigenetic interactions. So that gives us insight to the ways we might structure a supplement program, nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress management, to get a predictable genetic expression versus an unpredictable genetic expression. So in that way, we can kind of create a pattern of expected disease resilience as opposed to just disease reactivity.
Yeah, it's a focused approach. Yeah. With history, of course. So that actually helps a lot. Yeah. So you bring also age management, peptide therapy, hormone therapy, and immunology expertise. Can you share an example where these therapies dramatically improved a patient's quality of life?
With hormones, I'll start there. Hormones being chemical messengers that are sent around the body to communicate messages. Hormones are akin to emails. And think about it like this. The head would be the CEO, your chief executive officer of your company, your body in this example. Organ systems might be your divisions or managers. Well, I would want to make sure the CEO is communicating with your head of your divisions. And if that doesn't happen, which occurs when ladies reach menopause or men reach an andropausal state, we lose communication in the body and we become dysfunctional or even diseased. Now, when that happens, our immune system begins to go southward. It doesn't work as effectively because our body's not as responsive. We begin to put on weight, get brain fog, lose muscle tissue. We begin to get depressed. We begin to get checked out, let's say, fatigued. And so when you bring the hormones back and the communication almost happens instantaneously, the light bulb comes on. And someone can go from depressed, 20 pounds overweight, no libido, no energy, hating the world, hating their husband, hating their wife, and in 2 weeks' time, they can go back to who they're supposed to be. And we see that all the time. Now, when you look at like peptides are similar to hormones, but they're different in a sense because they're shorter strands of amino acids. Peptides are 50 strands or less, or 50 strings or less of amino acids. With that said, peptides act as signaling molecules. So if you use the right peptides, you can signal better, more youthful immune system response. You can signal better mitochondrial response. You can signal fat loss. You can signal muscle gain. You can signal better vascular function. You can signal better muscular or joint repair. And I'll just let that kind of sit there, and people would say, yes, I want that. And so when you put those therapies on board like that, in the right time and the right purposes, you can actually bring more youthfulness back into the life. And I think we can give more opportunity to increase health span instead of just increasing lifespan.
Yeah, that's so on point. My wife is going through perimenopause right now, and at first it was a bit of a struggle for her, but she found a doctor that actually understood how to measure the markers and then offer her the right balance of hormones.
Yep.
And in doing that, it's been smooth most of the time. And and she's totally happy with that. She actually sleeps properly, and she's even losing weight. So she's really happy about that. So
yeah, it's great. I mean, ladies need to get past the idea, as well as men, that hormones are bad. They're not if they're done in a natural way by someone that knows what they're doing, because there's two different types, as we know. There's synthetic, which are kind of unnatural, let's say, and can they work? I suppose, but they're patented for profit. Let's call it what it is, right? And then there's the more bioidentical. Yeah, and so when you get it right, truly ladies and men can get their lives back.
With chronic disease on the rise globally, why do you believe conventional medicine falls short in dealing with these conditions compared to functional medicine?
Today's modern day medicine has been bought out by profit. It's controlled by big pharma. Education is driven by pharma. My wife would tell you this, and I can verify this, is that in medical school you're given about 2 hours of nutrition. Well, that doesn't make any sense, especially when the father of modern day medicine, Hippocrates, said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And if that's true, then that means when you go to your primary care physician the very first time, the first conversation should be about nutrition. But it's not. So it got hijacked for big profit. Big profit, especially in our country and really around the world, it is. Big profit drives things, and people now make money off of sickness. And that ought not be. I look around the world, and I truly blame probably my own country, quite honestly, because of the standard American Western diet, which is so bad. And it's so destructive. And I've watched as the world has adopted that kind of philosophy. And I've watched people suffer. And I've been all around the globe, CJ, and it's heartbreaking. And I get it. It might be cheaper, but it's actually more expensive because you're deferring your cost towards spending your money on a disease process that was completely avoidable. And I've watched fast food restaurants, which, I'm trying to be funny here and make a point, but whoever came up with the term fast food is a marketing brilliant, because the truth is they put that S in there in fast. And if you remove the S, that's what you got. That's what it really is. But they just figured out that people wanted to be in a hurry. And the more connected we are, the more driven we are with even technology to a point. We eat fast, we move fast, we do fast, we don't think at all. We think slow. And so our mission is to flip that script around a little bit and get people to just pause and think about it and don't move so fast, but move more intentional.
Yeah. Life is about pacing yourself and enjoying it, enjoying the ride rather than trying to get to the end.
That's true. Very, very true.
How do you educate and empower patients to take ownership of their health beyond your clinic visits?
I talk about their families, talk about their purpose, talk about their kids. Sometimes we talk about their dogs. Sometimes we talk about grandkids. Sometimes we talk about their spouse or significant other. We engineer and wholeheartedly push that concept of why. Why are you doing this? What is life anyway? Yeah. We bring them back to reality and talk about, do you really, really enjoy hurting? Did you have a surgery? Was that like awesome or what? Did you just really enjoy getting under anesthetic and getting cut on? And do you enjoy taking antibiotics? Do you enjoy gaining weight? And then we try to paint a picture of what could be. And when you change a person's perception, you can change their world. Even though it doesn't change the world, it changes their world. It changes everything the way that they view. I mean, I'll give you an example of this. Like, some people would view eating well and doing that as a detriment. I'm disallowed to eat this or that. But I don't look at it like that. I look at it like I could eat anything I want. To me, that's freedom. I could eat my pizza or my croissant or, perhaps my green pea pie, the floater pie we have in Australia. Maybe, I don't know. I could eat those things if I wanted to. But I choose not to because I don't want to deal with the consequences of those things. So it opens up the empowerment for the person instead of them being overpowered by the system.
Yeah, being empowered to make a more conscious choice of your body's needs is priceless.
It is, very much.
It is. So, Dr. Mark, we've come towards the end of the podcast. How do people find you and Michelle's works and look at your services?
Well, they can find us at Sherwood.tv. That's kind of our global point of contact. And all of the stuff you mentioned is there, CJ, our social media handles and things of that nature, and all of our books and movies and even our services. We even got people right there in Australia that we've worked with before. So even in Australia and south of New Zealand, believe it or not. But we're just trying to be a blessing. And if people connect with us, there's a lot of free stuff. You don't have to work for us. It's not a sales pitch, or work with us. It's not a sales pitch. We're just trying to empower people. And I'm super honored and really humbled to be with you today because we're in this together. It's all of us. It's about us. It's about people. Whether we're in Australia, whether we're in America, it doesn't matter. It's people. And we've got to take back our health individually, in our communities, in our families, as individual people.
Yeah, walking consciously in faith, in connection to the earth and connection to each other is of ultimate importance right now because there's so much division sown by social media and mainstream media. It's like, things are only getting weirder, but we've got to actually ground that.
Yes, we do. I second that motion, sir.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, Mark. Thank you so much for everything you shared. It's beautiful that you two have come together and are helping the world in such a wonderful way. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, I'll just say goodbye to listeners. All power to Dr. Mark and Dr. Michelle for the work that they're doing. And I encourage you to get into the show notes there and click across to watch their movies and read their books and take up their services. They work with people worldwide. Thanks again to Mark for coming on the show and sharing what you did. It's wonderful that people are doing this work. And if you've enjoyed today's show, remember to like and subscribe. It's free. And also to, if you're on a podcast listening to this, open up your podcast, give me 5 stars, say something nice, that'd be really good, or share it to a friend, or share it to a friend. That'd be really cool as well. So thank you so much for listening to this episode, and until next time, it's bye for now.